When I was a couple weeks short of my 70th birthday, I started thinking about my mother's mother, who lived to be 100, and her mother, who lived to be 102, and my father, who lived to be 90, longer than anyone we had ever heard of in his family. I began to think that maybe our generation could be the first to routinely live to be 100. When I talked about this at family dinner one night, my granddaughter, who was 5, said,
"What are you going to do for the next 30 years, Grandpa?"
Hello, I'm Dr. Janet Price.
And I'm Gregg Kaloust. And we are Oldish. And this is our podcast, Oldish.
If you're oldish or know someone who is, please join us every week for conversations amongst ourselves
And our special guests
about what it means to be oldish in the 21st century.
If you ever wonder whether you're getting old, you're oldish. What are you going to do for the next 30 minutes? Hi, I'm Greg, and I'm oldish.
Hi, I'm Janet, and I'm oldish. Welcome to this episode of our podcast, Oldish, Conversations on Aging in the 21st Century. Greg and I are so excited to have a guest with us today, Dr. Carol Remz. She wrote a book that came out in this year, 2025. The title is Sex Ever After Menopause. Carol wrote that with Molly Carter. I'm going to let Carol talk about the book, how it came to be. I just want to say that for me, being in my 70s, I can relate so much to everything in the book. I just found the book to be incredibly delightful and very inclusive of anything you might want to know about aging, about menopause, about sex, about our bodies, about how to pleasure ourselves, how to pleasure each other, what anatomy is like and what it looks like, the importance and the place of gratitude and mindfulness, and what is love. And Carol, I don't know how you were able to pull all that together, but you included so much. And what we were just talking about before we started recording, as far as what we learned when we were young as females about our bodies and menopause and where does sex fit into all of that. I actually was taught it doesn't. Everything just stops at menopause. So books like these are so incredibly important for all of us, the women that are reading it, their partners that are reading it with them, hopefully, and that it can help revolutionize how we think about sex as we're oldish. So welcome, Carol. So happy to have you here.
Thank you. And I'm Carol, and I'm also oldish. And I'm thrilled to be here. I really am thrilled to be here. Thank you.
Yes. So do you want to tell us a little bit about where this all came from for you? And also, whichever order you want, just what is in your book and what people can be privileged to find in it. But I am curious about where that came from for you and how you got to this place.
Okay. Well, I'll start off by saying I'm 80. And so by saying I'm 80, I was born in 1944. And when I was in that generation, I got married at 21. It was my first marriage. I just celebrated my 40th wedding anniversary with my current husband.
Congratulations.
Yes, thank you. But going back to when I was 21, I got married. And then 3 months later, I was pregnant. And so my son, who will be 58 on August 9th, was born in 1967. I was married in 1966, was the lowest birth rate in America. And the reason is because the birth control pill had just come out. And even though that was the case, a married woman had to get permission. So it was a very isolating experience. I did not anticipate having a child that early. I'm not even sure I even thought about wanting to have children. I mean, I thought somewhere in my future, maybe I was going to do that, but not at 21. And so no sex education, if you go back in that time period. I think the only thing we learned in junior high school, we got together with our parents' permission, and the young girls could learn they were going to go through menstruation. And some mothers didn't want their daughters to go to that school. So that's kind of where I grew up. So there I am now. I got divorced and I remarried. And the man that I remarried is 7 years younger. And I was 40 when I got married. And Larry was 7 years younger. And About my mid-40s, I started to get into perimenopause. Now, if I got no sex education, we certainly didn't know a whole lot about perimenopause and menopause. In fact, that term wasn't even used, perimenopause, until very, very recently. Now we have celebrities like Oprah Winfrey and the actresses who are talking about menopause, and now we're getting national attention to that. But we still have a long way to go. So in my own relationship with my husband, when I started to go through perimenopause, I had some of the same conditions or feelings that other women have. Lack of libido, vaginal dryness, my hormones were changing, and I didn't know what to do. There were hormones that women had taken. It was Premarin, which was female horse's urine. And psychologically, I couldn't wrap my head around that. But shortly thereafter, there also came out the Women's Health Initiative, which had studied this. And it said that hormones were terrible. They were going to cause you cancer. And millions of women just said, okay, that's the end of that. So what was I going to do? Where could I turn? And I basically said to my husband, I guess at my age, this is what you have to expect. And, that once our fertility is gone, so is our sexuality. And that was simply not acceptable to my husband. And I had to do something. So I began to kind of look around. But along the way, which is what happens to us in life, you may be thinking about something that you want, but on that path, something else comes up that actually directs you to the right result. In my mid-60s, I was getting red flushing on my face. And I went to the dermatologist, and he said to me, Carol, you have rosacea. And it's incurable, okay? You can cover it up with makeup. So I did my Dr. Google and looked for makeup that could give me some coverage. And then I found a makeup, and it had this really funny-sounding ingredient in it called sea buckthorn. It actually is named different things that sort of sound like that. Seed berry, sea buckthorn. Well, I looked it up, and it's a plant, an ancient plant that's grown in very cold climates like Himalayas in Russia and northern Canada. And it's been used for thousands of years. And one of the helpful things that sea buckthorn does is help your mucosa. And it also helped skin issues like rosacea. So I began to use the makeup, and then I found a company in Canada that was selling sea buckthorn oils. And the sea buckthorn is a bright orange berry, about the size of blueberries. Inside the berry, the flesh is made into an oil, and the little tiny seeds inside the sea buckthorn berries are made into a seed oil. They have similar nutrients and different nutrients, and you could eat them raw, but they're kind of bitter. So the flesh of the berries is made into the oil, which is very dense and very orange, and the seeds are made into an oil, which have a slight orange tinge, but it basically goes away. So I used it on my skin and it helped my rosacea. And then I also noticed that over a course of time, I think it was also helping my vaginal dryness. And again, on the same path, when I was I think I was 67, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And one of the treatments for me, I didn't qualify, which is a really good thing to say, I didn't need to take chemotherapy. It was not going to be effective for me. But I did have to have radiation. It was 6 weeks of radiation. And I had read about sea buckthorn also helping radiation. And so I took the jar of the oil and I put the fruit oil on my chest, and it never burned or scarred or my tissue. I look fine. Look, I got a minor suntan. And so the other thing that happened when I had breast cancer, it's a very emotional and troubling time. We had a lot of anxiety. I had other things going on. It wasn't that serious for me. But luckily, my state had just legalized medical cannabis. And I was going to take advantage of that. And so I went in to the dispensary, and they told me that cannabis was really good for stress and for sleep and for all those good things. So I began to do cannabis, and same thing. Cannabis is a natural aphrodisiac. It's been used for thousands of years. ritually and also for one's relations. Okay, sexual intimacy. So I yield. And I know that one night my husband and I were making love and it was really wonderful and it was going on for a very long period of time. And I ended up saying something like that was just the best sex. And Larry said, ever. And he said, after menopause. And then he said, write a book. I have academic degrees, but that's what most of my writing has been. And I just couldn't conceive of myself doing anything like this. And he said, get help. And I found an organization here in Seattle that the woman who was running the website wanted to put authors together with research or writers. And I wrote my little ad out. I put it in the book. And I said very openly, I'm going to write about sex after menopause. And the first person that answered me was Molly Carter. And it was, boy, was it just perfect. Molly told me that she's been interested in sex since she was 13. And no, she's not promiscuous. She's a mother, happily married, and she has 3 children. Her oldest is going off to art school in Chicago. And she's just a brilliant student, got great scholarship. So Molly and I formed kind of a partnership. And I said to her, why, Molly, do you want to work with me or help me? And she said, well, because I want to be an intimacy coach. And I want to go out there into the world to do that. I've been helping friends and colleagues just through a private kind of website, but I really want to go public, and you will help me with my credibility. And Molly did become, by the way, an intimacy coach. She also explained to me the difference between seeing a sex therapist and an intimacy coach. My understanding is, and I hope I'm right on this, the psychologists don't talk about their own sexual experience. Now, they may write about it. There's some, very famous psychologists who will talk about that. But generally, it's not what you do. But she said, for intimacy coach, that's what we want to do. We want to do the intimate coaching, but you really will share with me and I will share with you how the two of you can make things better. And so it took 8 years. There was COVID in between. There was, I also talk about this, a lot of personal death in my family with friends and my dearest and best, most special human being in the whole world, my 3.5-year older sister. She died when she was 80. 4.5 months trying to fight cancer. So life went through this process. And then there was, Roe versus Wade. We've seen a lot of more conservative viewpoints become public about taking away our abortion rights in a number of our states. And I just felt that it was time. I wanted to make some kind of contribution. I'm an educator by training. I had teachers who helped me get over all my learning difficulties. And I felt that I could be a good spokesperson because I'm not glamorous. I'm not famous. I'm not married to a movie star. We're very wonderful people, I think, who we are being really greatly average, which is a good thing. And I think the other perspective that I give is my age and your age and being oldish. After you lived a life and you had all the ups and downs, you begin to really appreciate what's important and what your priorities are. Yes. And I found my priority. And I was ashamed or embarrassed. Sometimes I lack the courage and I think, am I really going to do this and get in the big way? And I look at the newspaper and everything else is happening that disenfranchise women's sovereignty over their body. And I go, I'm not going to get into that. So that's how the book came to be.
Yes. Yeah. So that's a fantastic overview of your past and what brought you to this place. Since my probably 40s or 30s, I don't know, have found it so fascinating and discouraging and confusing that there wasn't any conversation about this. And I remember in my 40s just thinking, I'm about to head into menopause. Is that it? I don't know. That's all I'm hearing. I can't believe it's true. So I think for me, reading a book like yours, I wish it was around when I was younger. And I believe it's going to make a really big difference for our audience and everyone else who reads it.
Thank you.
And you set us a great example, Carol, is lots and lots of people have approached the place that you were talking about in your marriage where the desire for sex drops off in one or the other of the partners for whatever reason. And similar things happen with men too. but the desire drops off. And so you have what I used to refer to as a libido imbalance in a relationship. And frequently that leads to strong disagreements, frustration, and separation. And your approach to it, which was, oh, well, let's do something about it. And then let's take that something that we did about it and tell people about it. And also, from the looks of it, let's make a new career out of it, telling people about it and tackling that problem, in quotes, but tackling that problem head on like that is a really good example, I think, for many of our listeners who are stuck. They get to that point where one or the other isn't interested, even in you mentioned your co-author being an intimacy coach, but the intimacy goes away too. It's not just the sex. And it may be more important that the intimacy goes away, because I know that in a lot of relationships, all the sex is intimacy and all the intimacy is sex. And so to have intimacy without the sex is something that we all should have learned about a long time ago.
You raise a really good point, because what is intimacy? You have friends and you can share. This is not sexual friendship, but it's a friendship that you just love these people. And you love your friends. You're intimate with your friends. You will share your joys and you will share your sorrows. And you will tell them things and they will give you back, they'll say wrong, right, whatever. And it really is the same thing. I believe that if you lose the intimacy, sometimes the physical intimacy, you do lose the other, because you're not really being honest. In the same way, when one partner has to say to the other, listen, I want this. Now, if I can't get it from you, can I go outside of our relationship? I've been interviewed in one podcast where they call themselves open nesters. And we don't have an open relationship, Larry and I, but, and she talks about that. And so I think that that's fine, whatever it is. So I definitely think that if you're in a relationship and in a committed relationship, you got to look at all the different aspects of it. And that's what was important to my husband. And it really wasn't important to me until I had to make an appointment. And then the really good thing, I began to learn about my body. I began to learn about things that I didn't know about. Just because I was that old, or just because I had degrees after my name, I didn't really understand my genitalia or my husband's or how it worked, and also what he's going through in old age, because it happens to men. That's why they have pills and medication for erectile dysfunction. And men still may not have feelings that they used to have. So these are all the things that I'm hoping to make up for. But I also am finding many, many other books who are also explaining this.
Yeah, I think it would be good if the education backed up as well, because so many people don't really know what their bodies are like and what their parts are and so on. And you've been lucky enough to take the steps to find out in your older age, but why doesn't everybody know that?
Well, we have education in the schools, and we're losing so much now. We're taking books out of the libraries, the public libraries, out of the schools. I like to say that sexual pleasure is an inherent human treasure. And that applies to any human beings who want to have sexual pleasure. So although I've focused my teaching and my education and what I'm trying to get across to women, it could be applicable for anybody, any man or woman. And people who are gay, they've done studies that women who are married, like something like only 30% of women who are married have orgasms, where homosexual couples don't have that problem. Okay. And I guess that they're sharing the same genitalia, but they're also sharing a more open-minded understanding of their own body, which they had to find out. Why am I not turned on if I'm a woman with a man? Well, it turns out that I'm gay and I'm turned on by not Bob, but Barbara. And so you will learn about your body and what turns you on. I also say to the women that I've spoken to, if you have a spouse or don't have a spouse, that's the other thing that both of us are dealing with, Larry and I, physical health issues. My life expectancy isn't as long anymore when you're 80 It's not realistic. And he's going to be 74. But I've discovered now that sex can still help you physically and mentally at any age. Does not matter. If you don't have a partner, self-pleasure, masturbate. The end result is going to be exactly the same. And if you don't want to, because you absolutely don't have any interest whatsoever, then fine. But it's a choice you can make.
What you're saying resonates to me so much as a psychotherapist and the work that I do with not only oldish people and oldish couples, but like you were saying, all ages. And one of the things we talk about, which I think ties in, Greg, what you were saying with what you're saying, Carol, is the idea of emotional intimacy, and that sexual intimacy is part of that and a way to reach deep emotional intimacy. And so I think it's so much both learning and unlearning what we think sex should look like for women, what we think our bodies are going to be like once we get older. Is just so much unlearning and relearning. And books like yours is what can help people to unlearn, relearn, learn for the first time things that are so important.
Yeah. And then I'd like to talk about some of the specifics, because about how you can do it if you don't have a partner. Fantasy works. I'm not saying go see porn. That might not be your cup of tea.
But I'm glad that you mentioned it.
Good. It's about if you really want it, you can, and there's studies that show this, you can fantasize and have the same positive experience. See, because the root of all of this, or the big master command center, is our brain. And I make that known first up in my book. When we hear about all of this, we initially go to our genitalia, and I say, no, go to your brain, go to your mindset. Why do you have the attitude that you have, or the beliefs that you have about sex or sexuality? And I have young women tell me, based on their religion, and all religions will have the extremely conservative aspect of it, will make somehow sex a no-no, or only under the umbrella of marriage or a committed relationship, and maybe only certain times of the year, week, month, whatever, or only when your husband demands it. So if you look at that, I go, all of that's fine, but that all starts up here. If you were brought up in a family or a culture or a religion where that was a taboo, it wasn't spoken about, it was only in marriage, you shouldn't touch yourself, you shouldn't masturbate, that's what your brain is going to tell you, and your behavior is going to reflect that. So the starting point for any of this, I had to make a decision that I wanted to change. And because it's important enough to suit my marriage. And that's your brain. So I talk about our human brain, about what mindset means, and that we can, with our thoughts and actions, change our behavior. It's proven. It's science. It's been going on and been known for a very, very long time. And the other thing that excites me about the brain, this was just one of those serendipitous things that happened. Just before I went to publication, a book came out called The Menopause Brain by Dr. Lisa Mosconi. And she's an international, I think her roots are in Italy, international well-known neurologist. And she said that all human beings who go through puberty get a new brain. All women who go through pregnancy get a new brain. And guess what? All women who go through menopause get a new brain. So when I was complaining and in agony over forgetting things, here I'm in my 40s, I'm in the corporate world. I have my own company. I have my own clients. And I'm ready to make a presentation and I go like, duh, or I forgot, or I was complaining. You know, people say, I think I've just lost my brain. Well, you're losing your old brain and you're getting a brand new one. And one of the things, and this one I really want to quote, this is what Dr. Lisa Mosconi says about what our new brain gives us. Emotional mastery, not overreacting to negative situations, not sweating the small stuff, caring less about things that no longer serve us, more self-confidence, more determination, more sense of our worth, more ability to sustain joy, more empathy. Isn't that amazing that every single woman in the world who goes through menopause gets a brand new brain. Hate to say this, I love my husband, I love my son, I love my grandson. Greg, I think you're a great guy, but you don't have a new brain.
I have a new one every day. Yeah, I think if you live in your life right, you get a new brain every day anyway.
Well, because that's the thing, it's called neuroplasticity. That's the other thing. So yes, we were gifted with the ability to get a new brain, but everybody can change their brain. Everybody can change their brain. Absolutely right. If you make a determination to do that. And meditation, deliberately changing your mindset, being very clear and specific about what you want. And there's enough research to back it up with people who've been in awful situations where they thought they'd never walk again. All kinds of losses, physical losses and emotional losses and trauma, who made a determination or to make a movie or write a book that they've never done before, or learn how to do somersaults, whatever it is. If you truly want something and you put your effort toward that, you write it out, make pictures and photographs, and you think about it every day, you meditate on it every day, you put yourself into that. Now I am an actress. Now I am a writer. Now I am a runner. Now I'm a great in my archery, in my baseball. I'm getting my batting average up. Whatever it is, you can change, and you can change physically. Absolutely.
So one of the things that I loved when I read your book was about the menopause brain, and I've already brought it up with some of my clients. I just think it's absolutely phenomenal because for women, we go through that, but I didn't have a name for that or an understanding of that, everything you just described. So I think it's such an amazing gift to understand 3 times our brains change and evolve and become. And I wanted to also say, Carol, what you're just saying about your process and what happened over time, it makes me think of our focus for this podcast of being oldish. And I remember thinking about, I think it was in your book on page 17, the idea of an encore career. And you said continuing to work in a new way in the second half of one's life. That's what this is all about. What does this part of our life look like?
Yeah, and that's exactly what you're doing, Greg, and you are doing that. And it's wonderful. We just used to put old people out to pasture. It's really kind of sad. And it's ironic now, look at the age of our current president.
One of the questions that I came away with was a woman who is dismayed. Some women are just accepting of it, and some people feel relieved. But I know many women are dismayed by the lack of sexuality or sexual energy when they've been through menopause. And many of these people will be reading your book and get excited and encouraged and learn a lot and learn how to take it on. Many of them will be in a relationship with someone who thought that they were done with that. Now, what do you do? How do you negotiate it from that side? I hear in the book how, you don't go into details in the book, but you and Larry clearly negotiated this because you were like, I'm done. And he was like, no, you're not. And so you negotiated your way through that, which is kind of like what happens in everybody's head when they're oldish. And this is one of our definitions of oldish, is like, part of it is like, I'm 75, I'm done. Another part of you says, no, you're not. So do you have any suggestions for women who are rediscovering or who are reveling in their new brain about how to negotiate those tricky waters with someone who's not enthusiastic about the change that they're going through?
That's a really good question, Greg. I could step back a minute and say, I want to be realistic about who my audience is. I don't think it's going to be a lot of women my age, quite frankly. I think it's going to be women who are in their 50s or in their 40s. I would hope also that some of their teenage kids or children, boys and girls, will get a copy and read it. They're not going to have any hormone problems, but they're going to see the possibility of when you're not driven by your raging hormones, life also takes on a very beautiful quality about it. That, yeah, I could get off really quickly, and so could the guys that I was with. It's a hell of a lot better having an older man in bed with me who gets pleasure giving me pleasure for an hour. So let's go back to that issue about the men. My husband, like a lot of other men, also suffers from changes to his body. Okay. And I went into a lot more detail in one of my first versions of the book and decided, no, I'm just going to concentrate on the women. There is stuff for erectile dysfunction with men or who have prostate issues. Larry has a prostate issue. And so there's really good medication that can help you. And there also are, I've known from couples who share this with me, the woman is more eager, closer to my age bracket, and the men who are not, because they're embarrassed and ashamed and they're having difficulty because they've been brainwashed into thinking that they have to do all this for us, that they're the ones who's supposed to know what the hell they're doing. And then we'll just go submit to the guy and everything will be great. Well, no. And so I think when that happens, and again, I have to be honest, I really don't think that many men who are in their 70s might be interested in this. I don't know. But I'm hoping that men who are watching their women go through perimenopause and are going up and down and all around and saying, don't go near me, I'm not interested right now, that number one, there are many more hormonal treatments for women than there were for me. And definitely explore that. And if you cannot take any hormones at all, I definitely consider the possibility of vaginal dryness with sea buckthorn and arousal with cannabis. But if you're not in a state that has cannabis and you need to deal with other things, then look at what some of the hormone treatment is. And as far as the man is concerned, either start the dialogue, or be realistic. Because I don't know, truthfully, I don't know if anything would happen with Larry that I would find a man his age that I'd find as attractive and sexual. I don't know. And also, we worked many years trying to figure this all out. Then I've also come across older women and older men, and they fell in love, and their children were very embarrassed because they were very open about being free. So I stayed free. But in truth, what I'm really hoping to reach is the women who are going through it or just through it, because you're not going to have automatic changes. And that will inspire them to say, if we want to keep our relationship going, how important is sexual pleasure to you or to me? And maybe a couple will come out and say, the woman may say, well, I think I want to do it myself, or, okay, you don't. I just want to say it's going to be healthy. It's going to be good for you. But if you're not interested, okay. And for men, Greg, write more about it. We have to hear from more senior men. And men are very ashamed that I want to talk about it. I don't know how many men would want to have this kind of discussion that you're having right now.
So far, none. Yeah, so far, none. So I'm going to get out of the way, and I want to let Janet talk for a minute. But before I do, I just want to let you know that I think that your audience does extend into people who are our age and older. I can tell you that the statistics on our podcast, by far the most listened to episodes are the ones about sex and sexuality when you're oldish. We've had one guest on twice, and she's in her 80s, and her audience is older. And it seems to me, based on our experiences, that either men don't want to talk about it, or men aren't writing books about it, or something, but who we've come across who wants to come and talk with us about how does it feel to be frisky, as mostly women in their 70s and 80s.
Good. Well, that's great.
And I think the menopause is I'm sure there's a whole lot of people saying, boy, the last 20 years have been tough.
Yeah.
I hope the next 20 years aren't tough. So, looking for ways to.
Just this discussion of opening up and even talking about menopause is like, oh my God, it's like a sun came up. After we can talk about it, and it could be on the national media and in our magazines and in our articles. I think it's just amazing and it's wonderful. And so thank you for that, for reinforcing that. What I was finding in my first initial interactions with people my age was that it was sort of like, well, that's really nice, Carol, but I'm not in it. And also the fact that the man, the husband of a spouse in their life or boyfriend, really didn't want to. Was in
Yeah. So talk to those women again when the husband's not around.
That's right. Yeah. And also because, again, women really don't talk about it. And even in masturbating, I shared it with some of my girlfriends, but I would do it at a cafeteria on a work break, and other women would leave the table. Okay. I mean, again, that's my time period.
Yes.
Well,
yes.
I don't think that's the case now. And again, the sensitivity of a man going through this, and a lot of women want to keep their husband's ego intact. Okay. So anyway, that's good point.
Yeah. It's so interesting because I hadn't thought about the fact that Greg, that we hadn't seen any books come across our view written by men. And yet that's exactly what's happened, is that as this is starting to take hold, there are a few women that are writing books, which makes me think, first of all, that I'm glad we're talking about it. And I'm guessing that there's going to be some men along the way, Greg, maybe you, that decide, hey, there's a hole here. We need to get some men writing about this too.
But here's the thing that men do. They go marry a younger woman. Come on, let's be realistic. Where did that come from? I don't know the statistics at all. But when you think about it, there's so many situations in the media and around my own life experiences, people that I know. A man will reach a certain age, and sometimes it tends to be around the 50-ish, maybe 60, I don't know. And their realization that, yes, I am getting older. And they'll take a trophy wife or a woman much younger. And I have to think that has a lot to do with them getting their sexual energy charged again. And yes, I think if I were a 60-year-old man, I'd much rather have a 30-year-old woman. Because I laugh and say about the men that I find are attractive are my son's age. They're just mature enough, and I find his friends that are very attractive. And in our reality, Larry finds a lot of women that are much younger than him, and I do too. So I think that's another thing that happens in life. And that's just part of life. I think it happens all over the world.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think you don't see a lot of non-wealthy men marrying younger women.
That's correct.
There's a thing you mentioned. You find some men your son's age attractive. I don't find women my daughter's age attractive because that's way creepy. I can tell you that when my wife and I separated 13 years ago, and a couple of years later, I started to see other people. And the first woman that I introduced to my daughters afterwards they said to me unanimously, I think they got together and talked about it. They said they were really glad that she was age appropriate.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I personally think also it's nobody else's business what you do.
That's right. Who's that?
Yeah. I mean, that's the first thing, really. And in fact, that's the other thing. We have to stop living other people's lives. And I think that happens with being oldish. I mean, that's the gift of your podcast is that we are who we are because we're finally living our own life with the history and looking back and reflecting at the learnings and the things that we did and the mistakes that we made and the choices. And the other thing that I hope for everybody is I never want to go back, and I don't want to have a lot of regrets. I want to see all of those things that I kind of screwed up as more of a learning experience. I can still feel shame, embarrassment, disappointment in myself that I could have done something that was stupid. But I think age gives us some wisdom and some perspective. And I think the best thing is I want to encourage everybody else for the same thing that I'm doing is get the most out of it right now, because these are scary times. Our climate is changing. I was reading today about terrible floods in Texas. Really sad. And we have disasters every day. People's lives are endangered and things that are happening. So we've got to be in gratitude, be grateful for the life that we have, that I can afford to do the things that I can do, that we can have this kind of podcast. People can listen to it. And let's see that we want to keep moving forward in the positive way to make a difference so that we live in a world that's better for our children.
Absolutely.
The other part of what I'm doing, I think what else can I do? I know it because I've had people say to me, I cannot believe it. This is just terrifying. It's so unbecoming. It's just dirty. And, okay. Anyway, but again, obviously we don't feel that way. And
Yes.
and that's what's again encouraging. We still have the liberties and the ability to have these kinds of books being written, have these kinds of dialogues, these teachings, these opportunities, and that's what we want to support.
Yes. I know we're getting close to the end, and I wanted to share this quote that jumped out at me in the book. It said, Carol, you wrote, "Sexual pleasure has beautiful benefits for our physical and emotional well-being. It's ageless." And I liked that kind of
And it's scientifically proven. It has got nothing to do with me. It has been scientifically proven. And it's the day you die, if you can have the physical capacity and the
Yes.
mental ability and the emotional want and desire, it's there for you. And again, for seniors, it can be touch. It can be holding hands. A lot of the women that I spoke to, some of the retirement community say, I miss the physical touch. I miss the hugging. But that was also sexual.
Exactly.
Yourself, touching somebody else, touching you, is going to be healthy for you. That's why we
Yes.
have a lot of pets and communities like that. That all these sensory receptors that we have with our taste, our touch, our smell, our sight, our hearing, all make us healthy and help us. And
Yes.
our sexuality in that is, and I said, read about it, see a movie, snuggle with somebody, all of that.
Yes.
And thank you. Yeah.
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 Yeah. And I love the part that you mentioned a little bit ago about that this all is centered in our brain, because that is such good news for people as they're aging. It's like as our bodies are doing whatever they're doing as we age and whatever is happening with this part and that part, it's all in our brain. So
It's
we can
everything.
continue to enjoy sexual pleasure because it's in our brain.
It's in our brain. That's the command central. When that goes, then we're truly dead.
I just have this thought, and I want to make sure we ask Carol the questions, Janet. But as you two were just saying that thing, and it's in the brain, one of the things that as oldish people we talk about a lot is I find myself in the kitchen. And I said, well, what do I come in here for?
Oh,
I'm
doing that right now, Greg.
Yes.
I'm
So here's
figuring with it. I'm having a PET scan for that. I've had an MRI in my brain. So I do have some short-term memory loss. And that is also that not necessarily going to impact the rest of you, but it's a reality. There'll be people who will die my age or 20 years from now, there are 100 who may have incredible brains. I'm not on that list. Okay. I don't believe.
So
I forget.
Here's a question for you though. And this popped into my head. I'd never had this thought before. Does that ever happen to you when you're making love?
Something else happens to me making love. And this comes from the cannabis. That's a great question. What cannabis does is it makes you very present. It closes off everything. And that can be good or bad. But for me, during intimacy and having wonderful erotic and orgasmic times in my life, I will leave I'll space out. Okay. And that could be that's not so happy for my husband. Okay. I know that's unaffected cannabis. I don't know if it's affected my brain. After I get my PET scan and find out if it's my brain is really not going to ever have dementia or Alzheimer's, I'll let you know. But I have had they're seeing short-term memory loss on my brain. So far, nothing's been diagnosed specifically for Alzheimer's or dementia. But I'm going through another test because I'm curious and because I'm able to do it. And they may want to put me into a study. I don't know. But I believe that, again, it's the two people who are together. But cannabis may make you forget that you're with somebody. Okay. Now, I don't know if it could happen. I do think even when I haven't had cannabis and I have been in a very highly erotic state and orgasmic state, and I write that as one of my definitions, I call it transcendent. I believe there is that peak of sexual pleasure and intimacy that's beyond orgasm, that takes you into transcendent position. In a sense, you're out of your body. And that does happen. And then as you come out of it, it'll be blissful and then transformational. So, but people have talked about, without being on cannabis and a very high, beyond the orgasm, to be in this it's called le petit death. They have that French, le petit mort. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And, some would say it's when you're in an orgasm. I say it's beyond that. But I don't know if it's my brain or that or the cannabis. I think it's probably a combination.
Well, you also just described doing it on purpose as a practice that's mentioned in your book of Tantra. The origins of Tantra is the sexual pleasure as a means of transcendence.
That's exactly correct. And people who do that, people who are at God, they go on these meditation sessions. I'll go to India and they will be meditating and the posture of meditating for hours. I don't know. They're obviously transcended into another dimension in their brain. I have never forgotten that Larry's in bed with me. Okay, maybe that's the better answer to your question.
That's what I was asking. It's like in the middle. Have you ever stopped in the middle and said, "Wait, what are we doing?"
And I know exactly who I'm with because remember, there's smell, touch, taste, and feel.
Yes.
What you did bring out was that kind of situation. And that's why also that in the Tantra concept of intimacy is the being a giver and a receiver. It's hard to do it mutually if you want to reach those kinds of transcendent states. I think maybe you can, but they very much focus on that you are a giver and you are a receiver. Those couples that can do it simultaneously, I know it's happened to me. Random, I don't know, who knows? I don't know. And then there are times when I don't really feel like anything, it's like just not in the mood. So it's just, the point is, it's complicated or it's not complicated. I mean, whatever it is, in fact, if you feel there's value in it, if you feel you want to incorporate this into your life, don't make any too early assumptions when you're going through perimenopause about what's going to happen to you after menopause. And don't think that you're all dried up and going to become some kind of a crone. You'll have the wisdom, but your body's going to be saying, no, we can still enjoy this experience alone or with another person. And the other research that I'm excited about this in the book, Molly and I had come together with what our criteria was for a wonderful sexual experience. And then this book came out called Magnificent Sex. And the researchers got together, 3 different groups of people, couples who had been together for more than 25 years, heterosexual and homosexual. Couples are people or groups of people who are having magnificent sex, who are having it in groups or kinky sex, whatever it was. They self-identified and said they were having magnificent sex. They were interviewed. And after that long interview, everything was taken out of the interview that would indicate their sex or their age or their male or female or anything like that. All 3 groups, except for the sex psychologists, but they weren't really part of the study, used the same words to describe magnificent sex. And as I like to say it in the book, it was like, or I think maybe I took the quote out of the book. It was all of us climbing up to a mountaintop in a different way. But once we got to the top of the mountain, we had the same experience. And so they talked about trust, intimacy, compassion, communication, sharing, which is also part of my definition of love. So it doesn't matter physically what your body is like or anything, the color of your skin, or you all have this if you want it. And it's been proven now that the study was there were couples who were over 65. They don't usually interview couples over 65 about their sexual relations. So I love that it came out, and I felt we were validated for what we had ourselves discovered. And I certainly recommend that people look at that and read it again and see what's possible. if you meet the other criteria, and they're not hard criteria. It doesn't mean that you got a 36, 22, 34, measurements, or that you're a 6'4" guy who's very muscular. It doesn't matter. What's in your brain and in your heart.
But before we end, we like to ask our guests 2 questions. One is, at this point in your life, what excites you about aging? And at this moment in your life, what is scary for you about aging?
I think what excites me is that I can enjoy my grandson and his girlfriend and the life that he's living and inspire me. I can't think of anything better. And I want to be able to enjoy that till as long as I can. I can't think of anything better. Great parents. I love my immediate family, but I think more than anything is our grandson, and he's in a wonderful relationship right now. To live to see that, and then see how his parents, my son, my daughter-in-law, helped him to become the wonderful young man that he is, and his wonderful friends. That just gives me so much joy. Now, your second question, what was that?
As at this moment in your life, as you're aging, what is scary for you?
I think there are a number of things. How this stuff that I'm doing now with my brain is going to play out. Okay. And it's probably a little bit scarier for Larry, because we both realize at our age right now that we're both going to be responsible for each other's health. The decisions that we have to make, can we afford both economically and psychologically and physically to be able to stay in the home that we love? And that's a big decision for many seniors. We have a small house, but it's on the water. And can we maintain that? Because we have a seawall and we have a potential big earthquake coming to where we live in Washington and California and Oregon. So I think that as we age and my body is getting older, I am dying. I don't take any medication, but I'm older. I'm 80. My body is changing and getting older and dying. And so these are the issues that we're dealing with right now, that are physical issues of aging. Where we live, are we going to have to go into a retirement community, which I'm very resistant. But is that really going to be realistic? And I think and I'm finding people our age having the same discussions.
Makes sense. Thank you for sharing that. And I just want to throw in before we end that we're about to have a discussion in our podcast group. Carol, every once in a while, we review books that have something to do with aging. The next book is called Our Souls at Night. And I'm bringing it up right now because I feel like it relates in the sense of, in the very first page or two, you find out that an oldish woman who's a widow goes a couple of doors down the street and knocks on this oldish man's door who's a widower and asks him if he would come and start sleeping with her at night, because she can't sleep well and she likes to have a body next to her and someone who she cares about.
Oh, I love it. That's great.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes. Is there anything else that you wanted to say before we have to end?
Thank you so much for this. It's great. I just loved it. Thank you.
Thank you for all that you've done.
So at this point, I'd like to say thank you, Carol Remz. We've had a great time chatting with you, and thank you, as always, Janet. I always learn things sitting and talking with you. And I look forward to being with you all again one of these days.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye. That's it for now. Thanks for listening. We had a great time visiting with Carol Remz, and hope you did too. Her sex-positive approach to aging is refreshing and exciting. You can find her book and many of the other books we've talked about on Oldish in our bookstore at www.bookshop.org/shop/Oldish. When you buy one of our books, we get a small commission to help support this podcast, and an independent bookstore of your choice gets a share of the purchase price. Thanks. You can leave comments or requests for topics or guests on this or other episodes at www.oldish.me. There's a link there too if you've wondered how you can help support our podcast. If you like what you heard today, please tell a friend and rate and review our podcast on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts.